Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. This is about eighth, ninth attempt trying to record this episode, trying to make sure I have all the right information in terms of how I want to express my opinions on the matters, and just making sure I get across to you, the listener, how I feel about this, and as much of an ejected manner as possible. But I know that's what I say, but in all honesty, I'm probably going to throw away my journalistic hat out the window for this one. So, first, we're just going to start off with the game. Congratulations to the 2023 Florida State Seminoles, 13 0, 8 0 in the ACC conference as they win the ACC championship against a top 15 ranked opponent, the Louisville Cardinals, 16 6. A masterful performance, a game for the ages for this defense. I mean, 7 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, 10 pass deflections. Braden Fisk, 3 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss. Jared Verse, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. Fabian Lovett, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Patrick Payton, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. I mean, this front line was absolutely incredible. Tatum Bethune had a tackle for loss and a pass deflection, and he shined when Alex Mastromano. He made a great decision, folks, by holding on to the football and getting tackled rather than kicking the ball off because he had about, on that pump block, is what I'm speaking about. They overloaded one side. He rolled to that side. He had, not including the guy who would have blocked the punt, there was 5 total, but he had 4 guys, Louisville guys, just waiting to pick up a ball to run it back in the end zone. He just ate it. And the defense held and didn't even allow a field goal because Tatum Bethune on the first play ripped the ball out from the chest of the tight end as he was landing on his back and then intercepted the ball. I mean, what a sequence of events for that kid. And like I said, this front of the defense, brilliant play calling by Adam Fuller, and congrats to him for getting his extension. I know I've harped on him over the past few years, but this defense does amazing jobs in the second half. I've always said that this season. And this was the most complete game that they've played all year. And we'll get into statistics of how much they limited this team. But, I mean, just start off with the quarterback, Jack Plummer, 14 of 36, 111 yards, a 3.1 average per pass, and 1 interception. Jawar Jordan, this is a kid who has over 1,100 yards, 13 TDs, and he averages 6.2 yards a carry. Folks, he was held to 14 carries for 52 yards. I mean, Jamari Thrash, when he was starting to look like he was going to separate, and this is a kid who had almost a little over 850 yards and 6 touchdowns. This is a kid who was looking good. They were trying to pick on Azarie Thomas, who held his own, but then they switched Renardo Green on him. He had 3 pass deflections and shut him down because Renardo Green, he's been our shutdown corner this year, and he's proven it. Great job by the back end. Especially, doing the man-to-man. They did a great job. And just, again, the stunts and the Braden Fisk and Jared Verse just switching on the insides and just confusing this line. 5 sacks between those two and 7.5 tackles for loss. I think the most important thing that this game showed was as this was a great team. They really just imposed their will on a really good offense and on a really good defense as well in terms of running defense. This is a team that came in not giving up 100 yards per game on average. And with everybody in the building, everybody in the stadium, everybody watching on the field at home knew that they were going to try and establish the run, the Seminoles, because Brock Glenn is a true freshman. Lawrence Tolafili, 10 carries for 118 yards with a touchdown. Trey Benson, 18 carries for 67 yards. Rodney Hill, 3 carries for 9 yards. Not including Glenn and Mastromano, the running backs carried for 195 yards. This is with everybody in the box. Incredible job by this offensive line that has been really, unfortunately, not living up to its potential, but they really just did what they had to do this game. Brock Glenn didn't make any mistakes. 8 of 21, 55 yards. Obviously, that's not impressive. But again, there's a true freshman thrown into the field with the weight of his world, weight of the world on his shoulders. If they lose, they're out of the playoffs. If they win, they're in. Well, we'll get to that in a second. And he played the second half injured because on one of the running plays that he did, he hyperextended his knee. But again, this defense really showed what kind of special talent they are. To put it into perspective, Louisville came into the game averaging over 33 points per game. Florida State held them to 6. Louisville came in averaging 438.6 yards per game. They were held to 188 by this defense. Louisville came in averaging 6.57 yards per play. Florida State held them to 2.7. It's just an otherworldly performance. Just absolutely crazy. This is the team that with 54 minutes into the game time, 54 minutes, they had 199 yards. Like I said, they finished with 188. They were on the verge of breaking 200 yards total offense, and they lost 11 yards. Incredible performance by this defense. This is the same defense that finished 10th in yards per play, 4.68. 10th in tackles for loss per game, 7.39. 6th in scoring, 15.9 points per game. 5th in direct points allowed, 14.2. 4th in sack rate, 11.6%. 2nd in passer rating, 96.5. 1st in completion percentage, 46.8. And 1st in passes defended, 6.69 per game. This defense hasn't allowed more than 20 points in any game since the end of September. And they're playing into the first week of December, folks. That's 2 whole months. Not including defense or special team scores. The Seminoles have limited their last 8 Power 5 opponents to an average 11 points per game. 11. Just, again, an incredible job. This is a team game. And this is where I transition to the travesty that happened this past Sunday. Cowards. Absolute cowards on the College Football Playoff Committee. They used the Jordan Travis injury as a crutch. They boxed themselves in, and we'll get to that momentarily. They boxed themselves in by keeping... let's get into it now. They kept Florida State at number 4, going up against Florida. They kept that at number 4, going up against Louisville. And they showed as a team, winning with their backup quarterback in the swamp in Gainesville. As a team, winning with their third-string quarterback at a neutral site against a top 15 opponent. Beating both of them by 2 scores. Both of those, a rivalry game and a championship game with your second-string and third-string quarterback. By the way, since Jordan got hurt, the Florida State defense has been on the field for 38 possessions. The one touchdown they allowed, and we discussed this in the Florida podcast, was the one where it was the very questionable that even Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were wondering where the penalty was on 3rd down where they called roughing the passer or personal foul. And they got the first down. So essentially 0 TDs on 38 possessions since the injury. But hey, this team can't compete, right? They can't compete with the big boys. Apparently. Jordan Travis obviously wouldn't have started. It would have been Tate Rodmaker in the playoffs, which the committee forgot because they keep on saying they only have 55 passing yards. This offense looks different. No doubt this offense looked different, obviously. Because if Jordan Travis was that important, he should win the Heisman with the way they're quantifying his impact on this team. That being said, this team could have made some noise in the playoffs. This defense is elite. And by the way, 2014 Ohio State, 2017 Alabama, 2018 Clemson, 2021 Georgia, all of those teams won with a quarterback who wasn't their opening week starter. Another fun fact, FSU won its title game by more than Alabama did. It's won both its past games, the last two, by more than Alabama has. And since Jordan got hurt against North Alabama, the Seminoles have thrown for just 8 fewer yards than Michigan in that same stretch. But Michigan gets just through without any debate, any quantifying of who they are and the weak schedule that they had. Here's another fun fact when you're comparing both those quarterbacks. QB stats for the final 3 games. Florida State, 441 total yards of offense, 3 touchdowns. Michigan, 436 yards of total offense, 1 touchdown. But hey, we had to leave FSU out because they're a different level of QB late in the season. Cowards. And you see it on the bottom of the rankings too. You see it there with Liberty and SMU. SMU actually had the fortitude to go out and schedule Oklahoma and TCU, and they get punished for that. Meanwhile, Liberty has the 133rd out of 133rd ranked strength of schedule, and the committee said they get in because they just kept on winning. One for thee, but not for me, apparently. Cowards. And they did this because they knew it wouldn't set a precedent. Every year before this one, for the past 9+ years, the teams that have won have gotten in. There's times where they put in other teams that clearly aren't the 4 best, but they put them in because they didn't have an excuse. They didn't have a reason to not put them in. Allegedly. Michigan State, you think they were one of the top 4 teams when they got in? Come on. Everybody wants to use TCU last year, that Alabama should have got in with 2 losses. By the way, that's the same TCU that people reference, they lost to Georgia 65-7. But hey, they beat Michigan. We conveniently forget that, the darling of this college football playoff committee. They know it's going to be a 12-team playoff next year. So they can just skate on by and say, today, this is a unique year. That was one of their quotes. This is the same college football playoff committee that believed Texas, a team that hasn't ranked above FSU all season, was worthy of jumping up 4 spots and passing them. The same Texas team that lost to Oklahoma 34-30 when they had to hold a lead, I believe it was under 2 minutes against the rival, they didn't do it. They beat Houston 31-24 on a suspect placement of the ball on 4th down for Houston. They beat Kansas State 33-30. TCU by a field goal 29-26. And they beat Oklahoma State 49-21 in the Big 12 championship game. By the way, this is the same Oklahoma State team that lost 33-7 to South Alabama. 34-27 to Iowa State, and 45-3 to UCF. The same team that was ranked below Louisville. It was more impressive that they got the style points and put up 49 points and beat Oklahoma State as opposed to a defensive performance 16-6 against Louisville, a top-ranked offense. But hey. And let's go to the sweet, sweet darling, the lovers of ESPN, the SEC. Because you can't have a playoff without the SEC, apparently. The Alabama Crimson Tide are apparently the only team that has improved all season. But let's take a look at that. Because obviously we erased September, where Texas came in to Tuscaloosa and absolutely dominated on both sides of the ball, winning the game 34-24. Dominating the SEC champs. Is the same team that struggled with South Florida, winning 17-3. They beat A&M 26-20, the same team that Miami beat 48-33. This is Alabama, the same team that beat a 4-8 Arkansas team 24-21. The same team, again, that was on the ascension at the end of the year, beat Auburn 27-24 on a 4th and goal from the 31, essentially a 4th and 31. A 6-5 Auburn team that was a 21-point favorite against New Mexico State and got boat raced by them. They lost by 21. They paid New Mexico State well over $1.5 million to lose to them. And they said, we'll take the money and we'll crush you. That's a team that Alabama struggled with. A team that on 4th and 31, 4th and goal, where they have to get a touchdown, decided that the best thing to do was rush with 3 linemen. But even better yet, as soon as the play started, they dropped one of those defensive linemen back as a QB spy on 4th and 31, where they have to score 4th and goal. You drop 8 people back, I'm pretty sure one of them could tackle. But they get credit for beating Georgia, the number 1 team, 27-24 at a neutral site. Congratulations, you did beat Georgia, the number 1 team. But folks, this isn't the same Georgia from 2021 and 2022. And here's the kicker too. If Georgia was ranked number 2 or number 1 the entire season, why did they fall to 6th? And we'll get to that in a second. Because what this committee said was that FSU wasn't good enough to finish above Texas or Alabama because they weren't one of the 4 best teams. This is the hypocrisy of this committee. If that's the case, then why is Florida State ranked ahead of Georgia? The same Georgia team that doesn't get the benefits of an injury, the forgiveness of an injury. They get punished for it, the same way Florida State did. Brock Bowers wasn't healthy. He hasn't been healthy since he messed up his ankle. They had another important player, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they ended up playing with 2 freshman linebackers in that game. If injuries matter so much, why doesn't Georgia get the benefit of the doubt? But hey, they don't have to make sense with these rankings. The sad part is, folks, that the seeds were planted on this weeks ago. This isn't a conspiracy. There's videos of this. College game day. The same Saturday that Jordan Travis got hurt, later that night, obviously, because they played at 8 and game day runs in the morning and ends at noon. They had a graphic up talking about the chaos that could happen at the end of the season. And they had the Big 12 champion up at number 1. They had FSU at number 2 as the ACC champion. And they had whoever wins the Pac-12 as number 3. And they said, who gets in at number 4? Is it a 1-loss Big 12 champion in Texas, a 1-loss Georgia team, or a 1-loss SEC Alabama team? And Kirk Herbstreit looked up and said, they aren't a guarantee. And he pointed at FSU, a team that would finish 13-0. And he made the argument then and there that Texas and Alabama would have arguments to get in if they both finish with 1 loss. You see, you can't have one without the other. Texas is in, Alabama's in. Because you can't leave Texas out with Alabama because of that pesky little thing called head-to-head. You can't do hypotheticals, oh, what if? Because you know what? It happened. It happened in Tuscaloosa. And the problem that this committee ran into this year is that they were projecting. Past committee members have said this has been one of the most inconsistent years of the College Football Playoff Committee. And there's been reports from ESPN, CBS Sports, all these other outlets, various outlets that say FSU, they didn't think FSU could win a championship. They were projecting. This is the same team that believed Oregon was one of the top 4 teams in the country. They just couldn't put them above Washington because of, again, that pesky little thing called head-to-head, where they play the game on the field. Oregon beat them twice. Oregon lost twice to Washington. Washington beat them twice. One of them at a neutral field. They never thought Texas or Alabama was better until the end, where they could use that excuse of Jordan Travis' injury. Even though, again, like I said earlier, they boxed themselves in. If they thought Alabama was that good, they would have had them ranked higher. If they thought Texas was that good, they would have had them ranked higher. But they couldn't justify it. They couldn't. You know why? Because Alabama was a 5.5-point underdog. You play the games on the field. That's what Dan Mullen pointed out. Dan Mullen, out of all people, former Gator, former Mississippi State head coach. He doesn't like FSU. It's not in his blood to like FSU. He knew it was unreasonable. He knew it was ridiculous. You can't pretend like this stuff is going to happen. When everybody thought Oregon was going to coast in, everybody thought Georgia was going to coast in. It didn't happen, folks. By the way, if Jordan Travis was healthy, they would have been a 9.5-point favorite over Louisville. They covered that spread with their third-string quarterback. Cowards. Absolute cowards. They ripped an opportunity away from all these kids that came back. You got Travis, Jared Verse, Renardo Green, Greedy Vance, Hakeem Dent, Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson. Hey, Cam Coleman. Sorry, that's a wide receiver. 5-star recruit. Keon Coleman's going to leave. Fabian Lovett's leaving. Braden Fisk is leaving. Bethune and Deloche are leaving. Come on, guys. These kids did everything that they needed to do. 13-0. 13-0. This coaching staff did a hell of a job. They had incredible expectations coming into this season. Everybody thought LSU was going to be one of the best teams in the country. They were not dominated or slowed down in the sense of what FSU did to this team through 4 quarters. Yeah, they scored 24 points. 4 less than Alabama gave up to them, by the way. But they only scored 7 in the second half when they, at that point, FSU had their true freshmen in playing at cornerback. They essentially held one of the best, most efficient offenses. A kid that was averaging over 10 yards a play, the presumptive Heisman winner. And he even said that FSU was held out for viewership or branding. Coach K, a different sport, said it was ridiculous. Because when an injury happens to a team, the team can either show you it's going to get better, that they'll rally around each other, and they'll prove that other people can step up, and that the team is a good team, a great team. And that's what this team showed. Gus Malzahn, former head coach of Auburn, who played against FSU in the 2013 National Championship game, coach of the UCF Knights, said it was crazy that what happened. It was a shame. The current coach of Missouri said they shouldn't be held out. There's a lot of people in the industry, if you go outside the ESPN bubble, that said this was wrong. The games don't matter anymore. And Vegas thought the same thing too. Vegas had FSU as an 85% chance of making the playoffs after Saturday night's results. And they had Alabama at less than a 30% chance. But about 10-15 minutes before the show started, all of a sudden the odds start changing. It leaked out, folks. Both FSU and Alabama were at, I believe it was minus 110. Basically a 50-50 chance of both of them getting in the playoffs. Nothing changed in those 12 hours of what happened on the field. It was what's happening off the field. 13 individuals took an opportunity away from these kids. If you're not a good team. If you're not a great team, a loss will find you. That's what they say. And Booger McFarland, kudos to him, an LSU Tiger through and through, said it was a travesty for the sport. That you can't discount what this team has done. He said so himself, winning with your backup and your third string quarterback against a rivalry, against a rival, in a hostile environment, and winning on a neutral site against a top 15 team. Those are two of the most impressive things done this year. But everything, the championships, the undefeated season, how the defense looked, all that stuff was thrown out the window. All for what? One player's injury? This is the same person, Jordan Travis, who tweeted out he wished his leg was broken earlier in the season so that the team could show everyone what type of elite team they were. That's what they resorted to. Making him believe that he needed his leg to be broken in order to do this. That's insane. That you can make a kid feel that way. This kid's going to hold that for the rest of his life. That it's his fault that they didn't make the college football playoffs because his ankle snapped. Everything that FSU can control, they ended up undefeated. You cannot predict injuries. And they were punished for that unpredictability. Absolute shame. Absolute cowards. That being said, I want to try and end the podcast on a positive note. Like I said, Adam Fuller got a contract extension. Mike Norvell preached about climbing, keep climbing. And then he was building something special down here. And he was telling recruits, basically, I'm not selling you on a vision, just look at the results. The man went 10-3 last year. After going, I believe it was 3-6 and 5-7. 10-3 and now 13-0. This is the culture that I've been preaching about. This is one of the most fun seasons I've had watching Florida State football. Because of this team. Of course, it was very frustrating in the first halves. But overall, this was just an incredible journey watching a lot of these kids grow up and show off the peak of their potential. Just an amazing job by this staff. Hopefully we see it reflected more in recruiting. They have a top 3 by some metrics, and I think by most metrics in terms of other recruiting sites. They have a top 5 overall recruiting class coming into 2024. We'll see. We had Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 overall player, the number 1 wide receiver, in for official visit this weekend. You had LJ, the one who was committed to Florida. See if you can flip him. We'll see what the transfer portal brings. I don't think Patrick Payton's in it anymore. That was the only one that shocked me of one of the people leaving, but it looks like he's here to stay. A lot of people that they've lost are buried in the depth chart, unfortunately. The portal taketh, but the portal giveth. And there's a lot of rumors as to who might be coming here. I'm not going to comment on it until it actually occurs. Maybe later on we're having a podcast on the transfer portal and what's going to happen from there. But I really just want to emphasize before I cut the recording off. This was an amazing team. They deserved better. They are better than what is reflected by this college football playoff committee. Great job by Jordan Travis in the offense, Jared Verse in the defense, the coaching staff, Alex Atkins, Adam Fuller, and Coach Mike Norvell. And the others as well. Great job, Seminoles. Go Noles. Unconquered.